Every English learner knows that they need words to start speaking this language. But if you have just started learning, it's kind of overwhelming. You are confused. You don't know where to start, what's the correct method to learn. And if you go on the internet, you find thousands of videos like this one, and you become more confused that what's the right way. And even after listening to all this advice, but not being able to apply it in your real life, it can be really overwhelming. So instead of giving you an advice, I'll tell you this fact. We all need just 3,000 words. I think this phrase is quite popular on the internet. So, what are those 3,000 words? Is there any particular list? This list can be different for me. This list can be different for you, but we need at least 3,000 words. So, I'm not going to confuse you. I have this series called a Spoken English series where I teach one topic in context. And if you are new on this channel, hello everyone. My name is Rawson. Here I talk about English learning, books, and movies. And if you are still confused what learning in context means, just look at this example. This is day 21 and today we are talking about. So learning in context simply means you are trying to relate one thing to another. So whatever words, sentences, phrases or questions that we'll be discussing here will be related to only our single topic. I mention in every single video that conversational questions are the most important segment. And it's obvious because when you are learning any language to speak, at the end of the day, you have to create something. You have to speak. Otherwise, no matter how many videos you are watching, how many things you are learning, at the end of the day, it's all about practice. So to discuss them one by one, now we'll move in my actual room and there we will start talking about that. So here we are. I've got the format here. So sometimes I might look here to read the questions. And before we start the topic, if anyone who is looking for additional help and they want to learn English in group sessions or one-on-one sessions, they can send me a message on this number. Right now, there are two group batches going on, 7:30 p.m. for beginners and 9 p.m. for intermediate. So if you are interested, let's learn together. Now let's start our video with a very simple question. What was your first job? My first ever job was teaching in a primary school. I remember right after lockdown, I needed some cash and the only option I had in my small town was to work in a school. I was looking for a part-time job, but I couldn't find. So I approached a few of my friends and they helped me get this first ever job. So it was teaching. Here is the format. My first job was as a teacher, shop assistant, office intern, and I was both nervous, excited, or curious on the first day. I didn't really know what to expect, but I was ready to learn, adapt, give my best. The work felt challenging, simple, or completely new to me. The next question is, how did you feel on your first day? Obviously, nervous. I mean, in general, even if I go to a new place, I feel nervous. But as soon as I entered the class, they were children. So instead of feeling nervous, now I became so annoyed because that was the first time I was working with children. After a couple of days, I got used to their complaints and yeah, it became fun. But I don't want to return to that place. Here is the format. I remember feeling nervous, proud, a bit lost when I entered the workplace. Everyone around me seemed so professional, confident, or experienced, and I felt like a beginner. Next, what did you learn from that job? Honestly, that job taught me so many things. I worked on that for a couple of months. During those 2 months, I became kinder. I mean, when you are working with children, then you have to be really kind towards them. So I learned that. And also, I learned how to deal with the students in a classroom. Those 2 months gave me a lot of confidence. Here is the format. That job taught me responsibility, discipline, teamwork at a very young stage. I understood how important time management, communication, problem solving is. More than anything, I gained confidence, practical experience, and people skills. I think you can notice a difference the way I'm speaking right now and the way the format is written. The tone of the format is more of formal, but you can definitely customize it. You don't have to completely follow it. Next, did you face any difficulties in your first job? Yeah, a few difficulties. First thing that I didn't know how to manage my time. So it was really difficult in the earliest days, but as I got used to the timing, then things started settling down. Here is the format. At first, I struggled with long hours, communication, and pressure. I wasn't sure how to handle tasks, mistakes, or deadlines properly. Sometimes I felt tired, anxious, or unprepared, but I kept pushing forward. Slowly, I learned to become more patient, organized, and confident. Last question. Do you think your first job changed you? Of course it did. I became more mature. I think just working with a lot of people who were doing it for a long time, I got to know about their mindset, how they used to deal in the classes, and especially how they treated students. And because of that, I was able to grow a lot during my second job, where I had to work with high school students. Here is the format. Definitely, my first job made me more independent, mature, and confident. It gave me a sense of freedom, responsibility, or growth that I didn't have before. I learned how to handle different people, a stressful situation, or unexpected challenges. So this was our format. You can definitely customize. And now let's move on to the next segment, that is modern phrases. I'll read these phrases for you. I'll provide a photo also, and you can also make sentences along with me. The first one is, it was a mix of excitement and nerves. When I finally got selected for the job, it was a mix of excitement and nerves. Next, I had no idea what I was doing at first. For the first week at my job, I had no freaking idea what I was doing there. Next, I learned more than I expected. At first, I was thinking what I'm going to learn with working with kids, but I learned more than I expected. Next, it felt like the real start of adulthood. When you don't have a job, there is no responsibility. But as soon as you get that job, you feel like you have to figure out a lot of things. So, yeah, it felt like the real start of adulthood. Next, that job gave me a taste of responsibility. Working anywhere will definitely give you that taste of responsibility. But especially if you're working with children, you have to be really careful. Next, I made a lot of mistakes, but I learned fast. At first, you are going to make a lot of mistake anywhere, but if you will try, you are definitely going to learn. Next, my first paycheck felt amazing. I mean, that's the reason why we work, right? Even though the pay wasn't so high, it felt so amazing that I can't describe it. Next, I realized work life is very different from a school. Obviously, when you are in a school and college, you feel a lot of freedom. But as soon as you get into a job working under somebody, the life is completely different there. Next, it was the foundation of everything I do now. It is. I mean, just look at me. Now I'm teaching on the internet, but earlier, what I was doing, I was working in a school. So it was the foundation. These are few phrases. And if you know anything new, you can definitely write down in the comment box. And again, I'm reminding you guys, you don't have to cram anything. Now let's move on to the next segment, which I mentioned in the very beginning of the video, words, vocabulary. And whatever we will learn in this segment is related to only one single topic. So you have the context. Here are the words: responsibility, paycheck, workplace, colleagues, supervisor, deadline, teamwork, experience, confidence, challenge, growth, skills, training, mistakes, opportunity, discipline, independence, pressure, learning, and balance. Next segment is adjectives, a part of vocabulary, and adjectives are used to describe whatever we are talking about. Nervous, excited, proud, inexperienced, responsible, confident, hardworking, independent, grateful, stressed, supportive, challenging, rewarding, practical, professional, valuable, overwhelming, memorable, patient, adaptable. So these were the two segments of vocabulary. I hope you are going to use them while you talk about your job. Now, we are at the most important segment of the video, that is conversational questions. What you can do here, you can repeat after me, you can do the shadow practice, or you can pause the video and answer the question yourself. The first question is, what was your very first job? I already answered this one. My very first job was working in a primary school. Next, did you choose the job or was it offered to you? Actually, I approached some of my friends and then I went for an interview and it went fine. So that's how I landed my first ever job. Next, how did your family react when you got your first job? Honestly, they were a lot happier than me because they were the one who were asking me since time they started working. Next, what do you remember most about your first day? I think the most memorable day was the first ever class I took. And it's funny, I still remember all the faces, but I have forgotten all the names of the students. But yeah, that was one hell of an experience. I was trying to be calm, but when you start being too friendly with these small children, they will not let you teach. So that was chaotic, but I got used to it and I adapted to a new style of teaching. Next, did you make any friends at your first workplace? I wouldn't call them friends, but yeah, there were some really nice teachers and they also helped me with preparation for classes. I'm not in touch with them, but yeah, they were really nice. Next, what was the hardest thing about that job? The hardest thing about that job was time management and second, dealing with those chaotic children. Next, how did you feel when you received your first paycheck? I was so happy and whatever I had in my read list, I started buying. So that was the biggest motivation to build my mini library. And of course, I was giving a small portion of that money to my family also, but most of the money was spent either on books, clothes, or just taking care of my things. And again, that wasn't much, but enough to buy a couple of books every month. Next, did you ever feel like quitting your first job on the very first day? When I got there, I thought that I could handle children, but man, every class was so chaotic that I just wanted to give up. But yeah, I managed somehow for a couple of months. But as soon as I got a better opportunity to work with older students, I said, let's move on. Next, what skills did you pick up from that experience? I already answered this one. A lot of things. First, how to handle classes, how to speak publicly, in general communication skills, and how to identify the gap. I think that was the biggest lesson I got, because if you are working with students, they ask a lot of questions and sometimes you're not able to answer that. So when you return home, you can work on that, and next day you can answer them. And if you are open minded, you can have a discussion with them also. Last question, did your first job have long hours or short ones? When I started working, it was during summer. So luckily the working hours were less, but we had to stay in the school. So that doesn't count as working less hours, because the principal or whoever there was, they always gave some extra work to go through paperwork. So I'm not going to say the working hours were less. So those were the 10 questions. I'm going to leave the 10 questions here, and your job is again very simple. Try to answer them. And again, if you're not able to make sentences, I highly recommend joining my sessions. You have my number. We can start learning together. So that's it for today's video. If you have watched this far, please leave a comment and let me know what you think of this series. And if you have any suggestions to improve the quality of video, again, there is a comment box. So keep learning, and I'll see you very soon.